Coming up on Over a Barrel, gas prices are falling across much of the country, plus a lot of unrest still going on overseas. That and a whole lot more starting right now on Over a Barrel. Welcome to the program, Over a Barrel. I'm Matt, he's Patrick, and you know, it's a lot of fun, Patrick. Over a Barrel, we've got a lot of good news coming up this week. I'm pretty happy about this.
Well, especially for you, the lover of 99-cent gas, and it's probably not
Always
that good yet, but we'll take what we can get 1 week at a time.
Absolutely, and before we get even into that, make sure that you like, subscribe, all of this stuff. We're constantly expanding Over a Barrel into new mediums. For example, TikTok. We want you, TikTok. We're there now, as well as like Facebook Reels and other aspects. And of course, obviously, our long program here, if a long form program, I guess is a better way of putting it right here.
Our hand at TikTok. Check it out.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we're all over the place. Just find your favorite spot. Find your favorite delivery method by either audio or video, and there we happen to be. So thanks so much for watching and joining or listening. We very much appreciate it. And now to the premiere presentation, if you will, 99-cent a gallon gas. Right, Patrick?
Oh, boy, man. You're too excited. I bet you we're going to have a few emails about that today. By the way, if you'd like to email us for things we should cover, you can always reach us at podcast@gasbuddy.com. But yeah, that 99-cent gas, I've had a few people asking, kind of reminiscing. I don't know why anyone would reminisce about COVID. I put on some weight during COVID. Thankfully, I got rid of it. I would not like to go back to those days. That was a little while ago. I lost my grandmother during COVID. It was not a great time. I couldn't really see her, but there was cheap gas back during 2020, Matt. And it was because Americans were not driving. There's been a lot of these comparisons, how we're all nostalgic for the cheap gas, but I would think that a sane person wouldn't be nostalgic over not being able to go here and there and seeing friends and family. It was not a great time, but here we are. And that's why gas was cheap, is because whether it's a recession or a pandemic, when people aren't driving, gas prices decline. And now it's kind of the opposite, Matt, right? 2022, the economy basically reopened. Air travel, the federal mask mandate was done. What happens when you open the economy after 2 years?
Everybody's got, yeah.
Exactly. We drive everywhere. We had cabin fever. So, by the way, that's why prices rebounded in 2022. There's a lot of political pundits that would like you think it's the fault of a politician. But it's simply the fact of the matter is, Matt, that you, me, and the rest of the country was just getting out and living after 2 years of being shut down. So, by the way, a lot of that has slowed down now. You and I have seen the country, well, maybe more so you, driving state to state, but coupled with the rising interest rates, that's why gas prices we're talking about the potential today of the national average dropping under $3 a gallon, back below $3. A national average of $2.99, Matt, could happen this fall. And why? Because all of that huge shift in consumer behavior, right, has now worked its way out. So, I don't know. Are you driving less than you did in 2022? I mean, the prices were insane.
I wish I were, but yet I wish I wasn't, because a lot of driving means that I've got business, right? So that means that things are coming in, video production. I'm going all over the place. I've been in 5 states in the past 7 days. I'm
Look at you, just about everywhere. I would dread being your accountant, filing, maybe having to file different income taxes and paying all these different gasoline taxes and remitting them, if that's what you do. That sounds like a lot of work. I
usually don't end up, although I probably ought to remit them. You're exactly right, because even like Missouri, for example, you get a refund on if you keep your gas receipts.
On the very little price that you pay in Missouri, as we look at it here, the whopping $3.12 a gallon. Whereas, if you fill up in Illinois, that's a big write-off potentially.
It is.
But yeah, looking at these numbers, Matt, you notice the color of all these and all the arrows are pointing down. Meanwhile, the way I feel about the economy is probably going the opposite direction, right? These go down, we feel better. So that's the good news. We're down 6 cents from a week ago. Like I said, the national average now at its lowest level in months. You'd have to go back to March when it was freezing, when the weather was lousy. How do you feel about that? That probably makes you as a traveler pretty happy.
I am very happy. I mean, I've got more travel coming up. You and I will actually be in the same exact spot during probably our next podcast after this one.
Yeah, we will 72 hours from now, maybe 96. And you're driving, of course.
Well, because I've got a lot of video production gear and audio gear, and you need a microphone and. Yeah, exactly. So it makes logical sense to drive whenever possible. And yes, I am driving. So I'm going to go through how many states? Multiple states. So we are, of course, talking about Connections Live 2024. PDI Technologies, the parent company of GasBuddy, and they do this every year. Last year it was in Denver. This year it happens to be at Washington, D.C., and of course, Over a Barrel, we're going to have even a live studio audience, if you will. It'll be a classroom full of people. We'll have to, of course, get them all excited again, and I'll have all kinds of fun with that. But
and if you have questions for us, we might be able to tackle them in the live session. So email any questions you have to podcast@gasbuddy.com. Matt, one thing, you bring up a good point about your road trip here to DC, where Connections Live is happening. I want to bring back up kind of a secret and unknown tip. And I'm curious here. Now, you're going to be driving from Paducah, right?
That is correct. This time around, yes.
All right. So Paducah to Washington, DC. There we go. You're not going to be stopping. It's going to be round trip. Okay. What kind of vehicle are we driving?
It's pretty close to that one that you just popped in there. You want to just use that one.
Well, what year is it?
It's a 15. It's a 15.
New vehicle. All right. So and those that don't know, this is simply on the gasbuddy.com website under plan your trip cost calculator. All right. What model? You said it's a CX-5?
Yes, sir.
What trim is it?
The Grand Touring all-wheel drive. There you go.
All right. Look at you, Mr. Deluxe. All right. So let's calculate your trip and see what we get here.
See how you want me to pick you? I can pick you up at the airport if you'd like. I'd be happy to do that.
Oh, there you go.
We'll shuttle you over.
It'll be my own personal Uber. 5 stars. Would drive again. So there you go. Savings with GasBuddy. Your cost, if you follow our directions and fill up at the cheaper stations, you're going to use about 57 gallons of fuel. Wow. Almost 1,600 miles. Look at that. Your trip cost about $170. And if you follow our advice, you save almost $50. That's
I have no argument with that. Although I get a little bit better gas mileage than that. I was looking at the options for fill up and I'm like, my gosh, that's a lot of fill ups. I don't think I'm going to need that many. Well, but that's just me.
Well, see what it's doing is it's making sure that you don't buy as much. Look at that. Look at that. Only 2 spots where it has you over $3 a gallon. That's pretty impressive. Don't even with your little smirk.
It's a genuine smile.
Get out of here. My corner station's at $3.99, and you're just like, yeah, I'm used to cheap gas.
What time's your flight land? I'll pick you up. It'll be great.
That's the thing too about the airlines is they don't have to pay tax on the fuel.
Right.
They pay the 9/11 security fee, the transit fee. There's a lot of, but that's the interesting thing, folks. I also don't think that they, airlines do not. If you ever look at, I could pull mine, and then they give you 8 different taxes that you pay, and that's where the feds collect money. The airlines would probably not really like if they taxed jet fuel. But yeah, anyway, trip cost calculator. Look at that. Matt could save $50.
$50. Yeah. I am assuming cruise ships operate the same way. I may be wrong at that. Their fuel. I could be wrong at that because you have to pay port charges and taxes and all that stuff for your tickets.
Well, and it may depend. They may use some of the newer ships probably use natural gas now.
Some do. That is true.
That could be a big difference because the propulsion on some of these large ships may be natural gas or it could be bunker oil. Because of the International Maritime Organization, there was a standard change in 2020 We all call it IMO 2020. No, that's not in my opinion. That's the International Maritime Organization. And they actually required, because a lot of ships are at sea, so there's not really a regulatory body, right, that would create policy. And so a lot of these ships were burning fuel and using fuel that had a lot of sulfur content because it's a lot cheaper. But IMO 2020 was a change in that regulation that required ships to go down from up to 500 parts per million all the way down to ultra low sulfur, which is 10 parts per million or lower, or they have to install scrubbers to remove that extra sulfur. Anyway, bottom line is that changed how, a lot of new ships are built, the propulsion. Do they have scrubbers, or are they going to use different types of oil? So not to go down that avenue. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things between planes, trains, automobiles, or as it turns out, airplanes and ships as well. So there we have it, though. That's the trip cost calculator, again, on the Gas Buddy website. Now that you've fueled that up, I guess that's also available in the mobile app, too.
Yes, it is. Actually, I know for a fact it is. I've used it. So with my Gas Buddy, with my Gas Buddy card.
I like how you're telling. I love this. See, the feature better than I do. You're I've used it before.
I've used it before. I utilized the Gas Buddy debit card or whatever it is that's attached to the bank account or whatever.
And Gas Buddy, there it is.
I pay with Gas Buddy. I use the Gas Buddy. Hello, I use Gas Buddy's app. I use it all. If it's available, I use it.
This. Exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm the prime customer, right? Like it is.
There was a Shell station I drove by the other day, and I didn't need gas, but I was shocked that in the Gas Buddy app. Now I do subscribe. It's $10 a month. It's premium pay with Gas Buddy, so it's a little bit different program. It's not the standard program, but it gives me roadside assistance and a bigger discount. So I'm part of that program, and I drove by a Shell the other day, and it said, "Deal alert: save 41 cents a gallon." On regular fuel, 41 cents. It's like that's bigger than, if you get a credit card that gives you 2% back, that might be way less, at $3 a gallon, 1% is 3 cents, 2% is 6 cents a gallon. And the Gas Buddy Pay with Gas Buddy premium card saves 41 cents a gallon. It's like, holy smokes, that's huge.
Yeah, you would definitely have my attention at that price point. No question about it.
But to talk about falling prices and big discounts, the price of oil, Matt, last time we spoke has really come down quite a bit. Looking at my screen here now, it is up $1 a barrel today. But all in all, we're talking about WTI crude oil, if I can share my screen here, at a minuscule, if you want to call it that. There we go. Beautiful. You're on top of it. Nice big advertisement there for CNBC. But
it's our friends at CNBC. It's all good, right?
It is. Oil prices $73 a barrel. So all in all, not too bad, Matt. And that's part of the reason why we're, getting a little bit of a break at the pump is because oil is down. We're only 3 weeks. Looking at my calendar, 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks away from the changeover back to winter gasoline, which I've been getting a lot of questions on. Some people wondered if there was going to be a price spike when we go from summer to winter. There's not, because there's a big difference. Summer gasoline is more stringent. There is a deadline in the spring to make the transition to summer gasoline. There is not a deadline to switch back to cheaper winter gasoline.
Gotcha.
And so normally what happens is refineries will start producing winter gasoline right around now, right? Because there's enough summer gasoline left. As a refinery, you don't want to have all this expensive summer gasoline left at the end of the year, right? Mm-hmm. So what they do is they start drawing down towards the end of the summer, and that way they don't have a ton of this more expensive gasoline left over after they can make the change over to cheaper winter gas.
The reason, we've talked about this before, the reason that they have to go back into a different formulation in the wintertime is simply because the reformulated is a little bit on the temperature sensitive side. Is that accurate?
Well, there's no regulation that they have to. If they want to keep producing summer gasoline, they're able, they want to, but they're going to be at a disadvantage.
Yeah, the vehicles will not necessarily like reformulated gasoline if it's 0 degrees outside. Is that my understanding?
Well, in an older vehicle, maybe. I'm not a chemical engineer. Where's George Hoekstra? One of our previous guests was a chemical engineer. And yeah, to his point, he had mentioned, if you haven't watched that episode with George Hoekstra, we brought him on a couple episodes ago, a chemical engineer, very, very intuitive guy, knows everything. And as he mentioned, the winter gasoline, there's more butane. It does help with startability. Matt, you're probably trying to look up the episode he was in, but
I might be.
So that's the difference between winter gasoline, but it's not imperative just yet going into September, October that you have that, because it's not getting real cold unless you're in Yellowstone, which does get really cold really early in the season. Winter gasoline is coming. It's a couple of weeks away. You generally will get a little bit less fuel efficiency out of a gallon of gasoline if you were in a lab controlled environment. If you would drive your car the exact same way, winter gasoline tends to be a little bit more evaporative. That's also one of the reasons why it can't be used in the summer. Those fumes go into the air and they contribute to air pollution. But winter gasoline is going to be returning, and it's cheaper, and that's part of the reason why, Matt, that gas prices go down in the fall. Not the election. It's because there's some seasonal things in the works. You've probably been hearing about some of those election headlines, right? All the political parties pointing fingers at each other. You did this, you did that.
Yeah. So as of the time of this recording, the Democratic National Convention is underway. A few weeks ago, the Republican National Convention was underway in Milwaukee. This one happens to be where you are right now in Chicago.
All within 100 miles, interestingly enough.
Yes, it is. And so, I have heard everything from drill, baby, drill to the opposite of that, and
Kamala
everything
Harris
in between.
Said right about it, there were things she said she wanted to ban fracking. Positions have evolved, right? Because I think Kamala Harris said that 4 years ago, but she's now made clear that she's not going to ban fracking. Matt, this reeks of politicians so much when they want to do a policy, then they have no idea what that entails, and then they have the realization how toxic or bad that policy would be, and then they back away from it. So you live, you learn. But to your point, right? Trump said, drill, baby, drill. The interesting thing about that, though, Matt, is that even with the Biden administration not being pro drill, baby, drill, we're still drilling more than we ever have before, at least according to weekly estimates from the Department of Energy. And here's the thing about the drill, baby, drill mantra, Matt, is that if Trump were to require or ease regulations, it doesn't guarantee oil companies are going to produce more. Because at the end of the day, the oil industry we're all capitalists, right? And if the oil industry is not making money, or if they're not going to make as much money, they're not going to produce as much because it's not in their interest. So, President Trump can say, drill, baby, drill. He can ease regulation. He can make it a lot easier for them to drill. But that doesn't mean the balance of supply and demand is going to lead to more drilling, right?
I think that's an important, aspect. One thing that I sent to you earlier this week was a story from CBS News. Speaking of, talking about the Ford Motor Company scrapping plans for an all-electric sport utility vehicle and instead focusing on manufacturing hybrids instead. Hybrids obviously still use gasoline. So maybe somebody somewhere is listening to us, because you and I have talked about the hybrid aspect before. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah. But if you are stuck in Yellowstone and you have an electric vehicle and it's negative 500 degrees or whatever outside, and your battery runs dead, you got some problems, and that's the key, the practicality of it all.
And it's not like there's a power plant, remotely close to Yellowstone, and it's not like you're going to get, much solar. So, it's
or
really,
you're driving through the cornfields of Nebraska or the wheat fields of Kansas. You know what I'm saying?
And so it's not just politicians that have these grandeur ideas and they walk away from them. It's everyone, right? I may have an idea I think is really good, and then I'm like, it's not a great idea. That's what Ford is going through. They're like, oh, hey, a year ago, they're like, let's throw all this money. Let's get all these electric cars. Let's get incentives. Let's give people options. And guess what? Now they're kind of walking backwards on it a bit. And so just like politicians, car companies can be all in on something. They think it's going to be great, and then it kind of fizzles. And that's what's happening right now is just the interest. Well, part of the reason why there's probably not as much interest in EVs is because gasoline prices are finally kind of getting back to what most Americans think is normal.
That's the key. And especially for deliveries and shipping and diesels, tractor trailers, anything that uses a diesel engine because diesel prices, as you have educated us on multiple times, there is a somewhat of a disparity. And in fact, I believe I have heard you say that a lot of times when regular unleaded, if you will, what regular vehicles use is falling in price, we'll sometimes see an increase in diesel in the same week. So there's a lot of moving parts there, and that has a direct impact on the economy. Ooh, what's this? We have a new chart.
And speaking of diesel, to your point, diesel is a different fuel completely, obviously, to gasoline, right? Diesel powers the bigger vehicles that generally drive the economy, and they require a different type of oil to produce more diesel. And diesel, as we see here, was very susceptible to the Russian war because Russia produces a lot of heavy products. Mm-hmm. So it's very good news that, the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, nominated by President Trump, still in the chair of the Federal Reserve under President Biden. The Fed's job is to slow interest rates. They've been doing that. The role is to slow inflation through raising interest rates. And part of the reason why diesel prices here, if we look, are at their lowest, there we go, January 2022. We're about,
we're not far from that.
Well, we're at what? At 371. And that's basically, see, look at that. We're right at about the lowest level since January of 2022. That's a milestone.
It sure does
and can you tell when Russia invaded Ukraine? Hint, it's like right here. And a lot of this was because the economy was surging in 2022 because of both Trump and Biden spending a lot of money to prop the economy up.
So is a lot of the diesel still coming out of Russia, or have embargoes, and basically has the global economy kind of shifted and adjusted when it comes to its diesel needs and or production to compensate, or is Russia still exporting? How is all of that working?
Yeah, they're still exporting diesel, but Ukraine, as we've mentioned a couple of past episodes, Ukraine has gone after some of the Russian refineries, which has had an impact. I think the bigger impact here, Matt, from this graphic that we're looking at and why prices are at their lowest since 2022, if you wanted to find a headline and pull it up, has been a slowdown in the freight business in the U.S. economy, right? People aren't buying as much stuff, right? The economy's slowing down. It's it's having the policy of high interest rates is having the intended consequence of slowing down the amount that Americans are buying, which in turn slows down the trucking sector, which in turn slows down diesel demand, which in turn slows down, all of this also affecting the global economy. China demand is lower. So when global banks, it's not just the US, right, with raising interest rates, it's been Canada, Australia, Germany. So many central banks have been slowing down interest rates. That's why it's not a US president either, by the way, is because this is happening in every other country. And a lot of it is because every other country went through the same thing we did. Pandemic, right, and Russia's war in Ukraine, which caused a sudden tilt. And that's why we're seeing now various central banks, England Central Bank, Bank of Japan, starting to cut interest rates because it's having the intended consequence, which is good news. They've been able to slow interest rates, slow inflation down. And that's why we're sitting here and talking about how diesel is at its lowest level since 2022.
Now I have to share something and get your immediate comments on it.
I see the smirk they're forming already.
Well, take a look at this headline from our friends at Bloomberg. This is as of July 26th of this year. So just about a month ago. Yeah, just about a month ago. Yep. The end of the trucking recession finally in sight as the freight rates rise. There have been some bankruptcies in freight companies as well over this freight recession, trucking recession as well. So then the key is if this headline is somewhat accurate, will we start to see diesel prices moderating and possibly going back up? And I mean, what are the thought processes that you have with all of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a possibility. Obviously, if more trucks are on the road, that's going to mean more, something to keep an eye on. There's a really great follow, by the way, on Twitter. Anyone that's curious about following specifically the freight industry, we should actually have him on. Craig Fuller.
Agreed. Yeah.
On Twitter X, Freight Alley. And he's been covering this, he's been on the tip of calling, the slowdown a couple of years ago. He's been watching carefully a lot of the metrics as the economy does start to reopen. He's been on a lot of these issues, and that's what he's been covering, is that there is going to be a rebound in freight eventually. People will start buying ahead of the holidays. But the good news is, Matt, people aren't exactly running out to throw dollars everywhere. Right. And that's really where inflation comes from, is when Americans got all that COVID money, which states still have. Right. They're still spending there. And the Inflation Reduction Act. I love this one. The Inflation Reduction Act, gave states a lot of money to spend.
States for a while now have been awash in cash.
Well, and this is part of the inflation, right? Is when you're all spending money at the same time. You're creating inflation, and that's what the Fed has been doing by raising interest rates, making it more prohibitive to borrow or spend money that you don't have. And that's why now, trucking is finally starting to make a comeback, is because a lot of the equilibrium, the balances in the economy are coming back because people aren't spending as much. So again, we've spoken about, will the Fed be able to pull off the soft landing? If they do, that's kind of the Hall of Fame.
It is. It very much is. I will say, states being awash with cash, other than Illinois, the roads have never looked so good. I drive on them all the time. And let me tell you, road construction this summer has been, I don't know if it's at an all-time high, but it sure hasn't been lacking. I'll put it that way. And a lot of it is resurfacing, repaving, restriping. I mean, a lot of the roads I have been driving on have never looked so good. Again, with an asterisk. Yeah. Other than Illinois. And I have to tell you, there are some roads that I have driven on where I even see state troopers and local deputies and city police driving on the shoulder because the main lanes are so bad and so
what they
rough.
Should do for Illinois is the state line. It should say honk if parts fall off. That should be our state motto. Honk if parts fall off.
I've had a speaker pop loose in the driver's side of my SUV because of those bumps.
Well, you got to stop jamming out to Over a Barrel. That's clearly it.
I mean, I suppose that might be a small problem.
Crank up the intro music and you're just jamming. Yeah. Gas prices fall to $2.99. You're like, this is my day.
I was stunned when it popped loose inside. When I hit it, I heard it pop loose. The actual speaker. It's not blown. It's just popped loose. And I'm like, how does that happen? Oh, wait, Illinois roads. Okay, that's how it happens.
Down. Yeah, that's beautiful.
I have never seen roads, and I won't even go on my diatribe because we could be here for 45 minutes. But let me tell you, our friends in Illinois, I really wish the highways. Hi. Yeah. Hi, Patrick. You're in Illinois. Please make the roads better. I mean, goodness. I don't know what else to ask. Please make the roads better.
And literally they paved over potholes in the new road. That new asphalt just immediately started to succumb to the potholes. It's like, who repaved this? That's government 101, is when you hire somebody to repave over potholes, and guess what? The new road starts to buckle within a couple days. But I digress.
Well, in St. Louis, the Stan Musial Bridge that IDOT built crossing the Mississippi has been closed now for a long time because some of the 10 years old, the expansion gates, IDOT making the comment like, well, we didn't realize it was going to wear out that quickly. I'm like, it's a 10-year-old bridge. It's crossing the Mississippi. Wow.
I got to say, at least if we're going to have to pay a lot more to replace our suspensions, springs, and struts, at least gas prices are a little bit lower. And that's, by the way, a trajectory that should continue. And I'm going to keep hammering it. It's not because the election.
Are you sure?
Say it with me. Falling gas prices, not because the election. If
are you sure?
The election in the spring, gas prices would go up every year for the election because, by the way, where's that chart? I am going to bring this chart up.
I don't know. I'm sensing some doubt in your voice.
I'm so sick of this myth because it just continues to live on. And I'll post something about, gas prices are going to fall below $3 this fall. And everyone's like, oh, ain't that convenient that the election's in the fall? And it's like, okay, this was something that was absolutely predicted, and I'm going to share this screen with you because
Patrick's on his soapbox. I got on mine with the bad roads, and now Patrick's on his. Let's go ahead, buddy. It's all right.
Okay, so here's his soapbox. 2024 fuel outlook back from December of 2023. here is our outlook. What happened in the spring? Here, I made a nice shiny big arrow up in the spring, and it's higher in the summer. And where are we? And here we go to the downside. It doesn't matter. This is what our forecast looked like last year and the year before that. Now, it didn't happen so much last year, Matt. It took a little while because there were a lot of refinery outages because of some of the heat waves that happened later in the summer. So prices did go up in September, but then they crashed in October and November. And there's, hurricane season can play a role in that too. And keep in mind, it didn't happen in 2021 because the economy was slowly recovering over the course of the year, right? As the economy gradually reopened in 2021, prices gradually continued to go up. So I will caveat and say it doesn't happen every year. It happens every year that there's not abnormal circumstances. So we'll leave it there. Gas prices go down because of economics.
Soapbox 101, right there.
I guarantee within 10 minutes of being done with this podcast, I'm going to see like an election. I'm going to pull it up right now and just.
How upset does that make you? Does actual steam?
It's just like, I just bang my head on the wall. It's like.
So actual steam comes out of the ears. Actual steam.
The vein pops out, You get the George Costanza vein that pops out of my forehead. Yeah, it's just one of those things, Matt. It's one of those myths that just will not die. Will not die. Just like there's a few other ones. We'll save that for another day. But as we wrap up here, Matt, with this episode, as we get closer to the end of summer, Labor Day is looking fairly good, by the way. I had a question from a reporter yesterday. Is there any risk that prices will go up for Labor Day? I looked at the National Hurricane Center's graphic, and there is no tropical cyclone activity expected during the next 7 days. So that is a
good
thumbs up, because that means if you give us a week from today, that's going to put us in very late August. And really then, the risk of seeing a disruption by Labor Day is very much declining. So Labor Day is looking good. Most areas.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it. We hope Labor Day is looking good.
I don't know.
Don't jinx it.
I have like a little 2x4 I can knock on actual wood.
Don't jinx us.
For most of us, I'm not jinxing us. I would only say it if I had good confidence. The good news is that most states should continue to see gas prices falling. So there's that. Unless you're in the Great Lakes where prices cycle every 1 to 2 weeks, you'll probably get a cycle before Labor Day. So keep that in mind. But Matt, as we get out of the summer driving season, everything's looking fairly good. Falling prices, gasoline, diesel. If you have a home heating oil tank, it may be time to pull the trigger because diesel prices tend to go up in the fall because heating oil demand goes up in the fall. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Come email us the question, podcast@gasbuddy.com. We'll see if we can get to it in our live podcast that we'll be hosting early next week.
And that is the fun part all the way around. Patrick and I will be in Washington, D.C., reporting live. That's back from, I couldn't help it. I had to do it.
Had to get close here. Get that deep voice.
Get that deep voice, broadcasting for so many years. I couldn't help it. It's a habit. But yes, reporting live from Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. Very much looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
I know that we always have a whole lot of fun. I lose at least a couple of pounds, and I love that because, I need to, and it's fun.
Gonna get that Fitbit, gonna get all your steps in.
The Gas Buddy app last year thought I was actually driving when I was moving, and I loved it because it meant that it was. I'm like, that doesn't happen.
Gas Buddy app is like you're getting very fuel efficient.
Right? Yeah, it's called 2 legs and 2 feet. But that's the key. We are looking very much forward to seeing everyone next week at Connections Live and at PDI's Connections Live, and so we're very much looking forward to that. And we'll be there for several days. And you'll be able to get some specialty podcasts from us all as well. And we're very just excited about it all. It should be a lot of fun. Other than that, Mr. Dahan, I think we are done for today.
I think so, Matt. For anyone, if you wouldn't mind throwing us a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we always like the feedback. Again, emailing us at Podcast at gasbuddy.com. We're on socials all over the place. Over a Barrel Show on Facebook and on X. I am on TikTok at Gas Price Guy. So if you want 90-second updates, and he is Over a Barrel Matt on X. You can find us just about everywhere. But for now, enjoy the lower prices. Happy pumping.